Okay, so criticize my art with me. Pardon, this is filmed on a cell phone. My camera's broken, and likelihood of getting a new one sometime soon, maybe not. So this is an old drawing. I decided to start with this one. It was a 2020, I believe. Things that I've learned since then. Uh, Number one, I do like how this rose turned out, but I threw away all of these markers. I actually donated them. Don't throw your art supplies away. If they're perfectly fine, donate them. But I found out after a stretch of time that I just can't keep using products that aren't growing with me. So I did a ton of art with these pens, but they are 0.5s. And most of my drawings now are actually 0.1s or 0.3s, and that makes a really big difference on the detail that you can do and how they bleed. So these were cheaper pens. I think these were Sharpie pens. And obviously some stuff has got on the drawing that wasn't supposed to be there. I also didn't do any shading on this one, and while I did have like really good use of some white space, I can see like a lot of mistakes that I made in turning around this part of the circle. Um, I have found too that if I'm doing an asymmetrical pattern like this, it does help if I don't line these up in the way that I did. And I've obviously made some kind of a mistake here. I don't know what I was going for, but there's that I'm just seeing. Overall, I really liked this drawing when I was finished. I don't love it now, and there's some of the patterns that are kind of my staples. This is a good classic one. Love this. Love this little section here. Kind of think the rest of it's not that great. And then moving on to this one. So this made a big difference. I did this one um, before I did the other one, and I had actually bought new pens when I did that, and these are the 0.3s, and just the difference between the two on the detail that I was able to put in there is night and day difference. So yeah, like I said, it kills me because I've spent the money on it and I've bought it, and I just want to use the products until they're like completely done and I can't use them anymore. But it doesn't do you any good in growing and progressing through your art if you're using products that don't want to say subpar because they're not subpar, but they didn't grow with me. I insisted on using them for a long time, and what I ended up with was a bunch of art that I actually really don't like. I'll see if I can find some of those in an old portfolio. But yeah, so I accidentally ripped this one, obviously. Had some tape or something on it, some stuff came off. I always date mine. I tend to date the backs now instead of the fronts. Um, but I think this whole notebook that I had filled up, I did borders because it was a spiral bound notebook, so I needed the bit of the edge mostly on this side, depending on like which side of the page I was on. But super hate this whole thing, everything from like the circles that aren't actually circles, because I do freehand a lot, but my circles have improved drastically since then. I obviously didn't know what to put there and just realized it was a really awkward, weird space. Um, so I filled it in with some cross hatching, and then these are absolutely awful. Some of them have 4 petals, some of them have 3 petals. They're all different sizes. No idea what I was doing. Gets to be not bad. That's okay. I did okay here, but I obviously didn't make these little ones big enough. That's another thing that I have slowly started to learn is even if I'm doing these small ultra detailed ones, um, it does pay off to have a little bit of space. So either if I had left this white or just done something more simple than all of the little spots in between, um, it would have served me way better. This pattern, I've actually stopped freehanding. It works super well if you just do a couple of guidelines. So like I said, I do a ton of freehand. I don't normally have any kind of guidelines at all. These are all just draw as you go, and then I put these lines in. You can kind of tell how wavy they are I've gotten, like I said, a lot better at doing circles. I actually kind of like this pattern. I might reuse it. I might try to figure out how to improve it. Um, Probably if I made it a little bit skinnier or if I used it on an outside edge, it would have looked better than whatever I did in the corner here. I clearly ran out of steam when I was coming up to these corners because the lines, there's like double lines everywhere and they're colored in really badly. And I obviously just kind of wanted to be done. I didn't really even put anything in the corner. Um, these are good. Not a bad choice of pattern. That's terrible that I drew over the edge like that. Same thing with this. So these two patterns are the opposite pattern to each other, and they just work so much better with guidelines. They look so nice and neat if you've, just put some guides in so that all these little sticky uppy bits and then the opposite sticky uppy bits are even all the way across. Makes it look really sharp. So yeah, nothing to complain about here. I obviously did do a tiny bit of shading on this one drawing. I don't know why it didn't crop up at all. On this one, I clearly added no shading at all. But shading is something I've gotten so much better at. So this is some 2020 stuff, and you can tell now moving into, I think I started this one in 2022, but my son is very young and haven't really had a lot of time to work on any of this. So I think I finished it in 2023. And overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I actually hated this part of the pattern. So I did the flower first and then kind of worked my way around from there. I just about tossed it. I actually had all of the rest of it done, which was the only reason why when I did this and it looked so ugly at the time, I was just like, oh, I've ruined the whole thing. Really glad I didn't toss it. I still don't like it. At all. Still think it's a terrible pattern. Probably won't use it again. I have used it on the border around the edge of one of my old drawings, and I made it look really, really sharp, but I got it lined up really, really well, which probably tells me that I drew the entire thing in pencil and had really sharp guides and measured like grid squares and did everything to make everything symmetrical. Probably worth it to do another fancy border, but definitely not putting it in the middle again. So I did the asymmetrics on either side again. I really like the black and white and then the color more than just the black and white, which I do a lot of, where I kind of have one color pop piece. So not sure why I didn't add more detail to this because it kind of looks unfinished, but I kind of like that I left white space. I tend not to leave white space very much. These are fine, don't love them. Same thing, these are fine, don't love them. Do really like this pattern. I use it quite a bit, but I don't know. I think I made it too wide. Maybe if I'd done it only 2 squares, but like crammed all 3 squares into like a 2 square width, it would look better. I am not sure. I kind of wish I'd done each one of these columns the same width, and I don't know why I didn't at the time. Also, didn't put any shading in, which is kind of odd. Because generally, by this point, most of my drawings have shading. I like these. I did okay. That's super boring. That's super boring. Just kind of meh once we get over to that side. I really like how I did this. I actually really like how this turned out. I'm not sure how I got it to be quite, other than there's only a few. So that is the nice thing about hiding something behind something else. You can do a really fun pattern that you can only kind of perfect once. That doesn't really need to be replicated when you're then only showing edges. And I probably had quite a few guides in here as well. Doing this one. Kind of liked these. Probably use them again. Definitely need to find a way of drawing them so that they do stay symmetrical, because some of them, like this line, goes off this way, but they turn out much better. I have done them before where they're more of a square angle instead of being in kind of the almond shape, and they look really sharp. But I do like the almond shape at the same time. So all of this is pretty good. I like these. I like this. There's kind of too much white space there, especially because this is a big white space. But again, if I'd put shading in between the shading on all of these bits, it would have made a huge difference. These are lazy. Those are lazy patterns. The circles, again, they're much better than they were, and they look much more even. But I can tell that I was rushing at this point. I was probably finishing a segment and had been like starting at the bottom and stopped somewhere around here, because I also can see a bunch of imperfections in these lines. Not bad up here. It actually looks like I got it all pretty good, considering I think I freehanded that one and kind of drew one section and then had to replicate it and hadn't thought about how difficult that was going to be, because I didn't draw a pattern. I sometimes, if I'm trying a pattern, will draw it on a separate piece of paper almost step by step for myself so that I can recreate how I've done it. And I know I didn't do that for that. And it just, like, the triangles kind of steadily got bigger. Yeah, not bad. I'm pretty happy with how those turned out. I was obviously just filling up space at this point because these are quite lazy. I do like the polka dots and the blank space. Again, look way better with shading. This pattern, really, really enjoy this pattern. It's very time consuming. I know it doesn't look like it should be time consuming. Super simple, but super, super time consuming. And I also didn't make the bottoms and the tops symmetrical. So we have the border that I did, but then this one, obviously the polka dots kind of has, I call this the worm pattern. I'm not sure what it is. I've got two of those in the different colors. I've got the spots in between, which when you're doing colored work actually works much better than when you're doing a black and white. It works really good for the details. Like, I've used it here. And kind of as filler, but when you do too many of those in black and white, it just kind of tends to look like a mess unless you've got some other stuff going on. I mean, I did these. I don't mind them. I think they're kind of too color blocky at this point. And then these are both good. The camera really doesn't do them justice. You can kind of see the other drawing that I'm going to show us here or go through here in a minute. So yeah, so I did kind of recreate some stuff. I absolutely hate this. I have no idea what I did there. It's some kind of overlapping thing, and I don't like it. I also don't like the flowers that I put in between. I made them very asymmetrical. Really doesn't look good. And again, not to be like excessively critical of my art. I know there's tons of people out there that are like 100 times better than me. There's a ton of people who are like, I'm just starting out and I would kill for my art to look like this. And I try not to do this. So number one, always finish your drawing first. And I really think about it before I give up on a drawing. Like, just about gave up because of this. Totally wasn't worth it. The rest of it turned out really well. And I actually got a lot of like good practice in from doing this one. And I'm perfectly happy with it at the end of the day. It's not one of my favorites, but still super happy with it. And like, you don't know, like I know that I've used this pattern before and I know that it's worked really well. And obviously reusing it in the way that I did here just didn't work. But you need to like incorporate that in order to learn from it. So yeah, anyway, try not to be like so hard on yourself that you don't finish drawings, because by not finishing, you'll actually just get stuck in a rut and you won't ever quite progress. You'll like inch forward, which is so painful. And I mean, you inch forward anyway. So this top side I actually really like, and my light is just awful. But then the border matches, so I did match border for border. There's the dots, which actually work really well in here just because it's such a skinny thing and it's hard to see, but I have 2 layers of worms and I put dots inside them as well. And they turned out really nice. I wish I'd used the dark blue pen just to put a border on the top of this one before I started this drawing. Not the end of the world that I didn't, but I think it would have made it pop a little more. And I can tell that, again, getting lazy near the ends of the drawing, like near the corners, is something I tend to do. So this is super wonky. It is super not curved the way that it should be for like a proper circle, but don't regret putting that little pattern there. The bubbles are always good. They always look cute. Did this on the corner again. I must have went through a phase where I really liked putting just lines in the corner. I tend to try to go for patterns more now, but obviously didn't at this point. So not bad, but 5 out of 10. And then the bottom corner, like this worked out way better here for some reason. This line is terrible, but this worked out okay. That's not too bad. I was obviously using at least some kind of guideline here that I can roughly kind of see where it was because these aren't too terribly wonky. This turned out really good. I don't like that I put lines in this pattern. I have used this pattern lots, and I normally don't put these like extra little lines in it. And I obviously decided that I wanted to add something, and I should have just left it alone. That's the other thing. More is always more, but it's not always better. And then, yeah, the little dots. Overall, not bad. Like this. I actually really like the light flowers with the dark centers. I alternated with this one, but I think that this particular color combo with the extra light and then the dark is super cute, and I will probably steal that. So that's the thing too about looking at all this stuff and being like, like I don't like this stuff and I do like this stuff and whatever. Like I would totally reuse this exact pattern in another drawing. I would use this one as well, this little cone shape that I've got all the stripes in, and I would just make the stripes tighter so there's not quite so much white space. But like look at what you did and modify it so that you do like it more for next time. Like this pattern I would use again. I would tighten it up so that there's not so much white space. The triangles wouldn't quite be so big and I wouldn't have these weird lines in the middle, but this is overall like not too shabby. Like I said, pretty happy with it. Then I actually don't think I'm going to go over all of these. I'll just show you some like stuff that as I went along, unless I really kind of hate something, like absolutely hate these flowers. And I hate the circles that I decided to put dots in. So obviously this one, it's hard to tell with the camera, crappy phone camera, but this is orange with the pink dot and then pink with the orange dot. Just didn't work out the way I wanted. This one turned out pretty sharp actually for like a white space thing. Was actually really happy with how this turned out. I've recreated this one in later drawings and done it so much better, but definite learning thing. Don't hate this. This is kind of lazy. Absolutely hate this. Hated this from the minute I put it in, was super disappointed. Yeah. And obviously like some of these too, just so everybody knows, like this is just a coloring sheet that I found. I think the last one as well, that one is a coloring sheet. And then some of these, like this one, not my drawing. I like drew it, but it's a tutorial drawing. So this is actually Phoebe Im who draws Bubble Jot. I don't actually know what those cartoons are. I've like briefly Googled them because I did buy 2 of her tutorial like drawing books, and I've been using them lots. And there's a few of them as well that like I got lazy and I decided not to draw and I just traced them. I'm pretty sure I actually drew this little guy because I have about 5 or 6 drawings of him. This is obviously the best one. The rest of them are terrible. But I am okay with how this turned out. I can see quite a few things that I really, really don't like about the drawing. These circles, not terrible. These ones got bad. There's obviously something that I've blacked out here, like the corner got all wonky. This is pretty nice. Most of these like very symmetrical square patterns I do pretty good with. They're pretty consistently like something that I like. Same thing with this. My flowers are much better here than they have been previously. Kind of must have got lazy with this. I don't hate these little bumps with the colors. But I do wish that I had done an actual pattern, like a proper pattern, instead of doing like the pink, white, yellow, white, that I had just done like pink, yellow, white, repeat all the way around. Um, these flowers did pretty well. They're not exactly symmetrical, but freehanding these are pretty good. There's nothing overly wonky that I can see on the like whole page looking at it, not through the camera. So pretty happy with this. Turned out okay. Remember really not liking it at the time, and I almost like again gave up on this drawing because of these cubes because I made so many mistakes. This cube is actually like the yellow is supposed to be on this side, which most people are like, oh, I would never see that. But yeah, that's supposed to be on this side. And then because I measured wrong when I started, um, I ended up with like a couple correction spots in this drawing. And I mean, most people are like, oh, who cares, whatever. But it drives me insane. I hate it when this happens, especially when I just didn't fill it properly. So, but pretty happy with all of this. Like some of these I got a little lazy, but again, here's the shading I'm talking about. So I started putting the shading in, which makes everything pop quite a bit more. And it helps. I did this one in pencil. This is awful. Absolutely hate these big flowers. They were gorgeous on a drawing I did quite a long time ago. And I don't know how, like, I must have had a circle around them so that they were more symmetrical because I made them very symmetrical last time. And I didn't. And I should have. The other thing is, like I said, I freehand and I tend to draw in pen right away. Like, I'm not doing any kind of guidelines with pencil and that I then go over with pen. So I'm learning as I go that sometimes it is worth it to like slow down. As much as it's a pain to draw over top of pencil with my pen, it's sometimes worth it for these kinds of patterns where I would have drawn like guidelines and then a big circle and then the small circle in the middle so they were all symmetrical and then filled the flower petals in from there. And there still would be flaws, obviously, because it's freehand, it's not a stencil, but you get way less mistakes that way. So there's that, and you can see the other one that's underneath. So I super duper don't like this one as well. I really, really liked the color scheme. Super like this cute little guy who is just a trace off the internet. Ran across him on Pinterest. I loved the outline for this, but I made it so busy and I just don't know. Like I really like this. I love the color scheme. It's super hard to tell. Again, terrible camera. But there's like 3 shades actually of brown in here and then there's the white and then there's the black. Um but like I wanted so much of this. I did have a brown pen and I can kind of tell I got to somewhere out here with the brown pen and then I did this kind of shading area and then I must have just like cleared up my table for the night probably and then done the rest of this separately, but I only used the black pen for the rest of this and I know that that doesn't make like a huge difference really. Most people are like, I can't even tell. But I can tell, and I think it would have added way more depth, especially like these circles and having the like borders of all of these not just being highlighted in the brown pencil crayon because I use pencil crayons for this, but having the brown pen with the brown pencil crayon would have looked sharper than the black pen with the brown pencil crayon. So I can't really complain too much about the patterns. I really kind of didn't like this pattern. They ended up being very wonky. But I don't know why, because I did use obviously a compass and everything with these, that these particular pockets ended up being very like asymmetrical and oddly spaced. And I mean, like, this just drives me crazy. Like, all of these circles are pretty much the same. And I must have, like, knocked my hand or been shaky or something when I did this one because this one, and actually now that I'm really looking, that one a little bit as well. This one's the bad one, but that one as well. They get whiter as they come towards the center. So, like I said, there's going to be people who are like, "Oh, you're being so picky," and there's going to be other people who just look at this and go, "This is such an amateur thing." But like learning from it, super cute pattern. Bubbles, very classic. Like most of the stuff I used in this was really classic. This turned out really well. It's actually supposed to be gingham. Definitely will try it again, maybe with like actual contrasting colors instead of like the dark brown, light brown. I think it could be super cute. And yeah, bad camera, so you kind of can't tell all of the different shades that are in here. But this is critiquing some of my art.